Welcome to today's commentary. We will be briefly reviewing the archaeological and historical integrity of the New Testament scriptures, specifically the Gospels, and how this affects the theological concept of biblical infallibility. There are a few things one must recognize when discussing the history of the Bible, and it is that we don't have the originals, nor does any man alive today. Though we don't have access to the original Gospel manuscripts, that does not invalidate or make the message of Jesus Christ less trustworthy or meaningful. There are at least 20,000 ancient Greek manuscripts of the Gospels and countless more in other languages. By comparing them all, it is possible to weed out incongruities and find the truth. Not only are there so many manuscripts, but some of them are written within a generation or two of Christ himself, which is even more good news for their credibility. When it comes to oral retellings, things can easily be skewed. If the Gospels were written many centuries after Christ and were based upon oral retellings, it is possible that they are faulty and largely untrue. But knowing that they are written so close to the time of Christ himself is relieving, to say the least. These things don't necessarily make the message true, but it does make the text itself exceptional and worth our attention and respect. In this way, there is room for the concept of biblical infallibility, especially of the New Testament. An opponent of the evangelical view of the Bible would be quick to point out that, upon reviewing these thousands of manuscripts, there are some noteworthy problems. Mark did not originally have an ascension story, at least not in certain older copies, and so one was supposedly added. The story of the adulteress was also supposedly added to John, and there are many other examples of these kinds of possible changes having been made throughout history. However, even if these things had occurred, we must realize something blatantly obvious. None of these things directly impact the theology or interrupt the narrative. And now that we know these things may have been made, these changes may have been made, we can better interpret the scriptures for ourselves. Before we move on, I must elaborate on the evangelical concept of biblical infallibility, and another term with which it is synonymous, which is biblical literalism. One suggests that the Bible is infallible, while the other suggests that the Bible ought to be interpreted literally until the text itself suggests otherwise. How do we reconcile these two fundamentally Christian beliefs with reality? If the Bible has been altered, how can we say that it is infallible? And what about literalism? How does it stand in light of these accusations? There aren't, truthfully, many large alterations to Scripture, and we must interpret all the text with context, even the supposed fabrications. The addition to Mark is relatively trivial in the scheme of things, and doesn't contradict the other Gospels, assuming that it is a fabrication. It is worth mentioning that there are many ancient scholars, and some modern, that do not believe it is an addition. Much of Christendom still teaches that it's scripture. The same goes for the story of the adulteress in John. In my next video, I will be addressing the character of the Jesus Christ recorded in the aforementioned Gospels, and then I will address biblical literalism and biblical infallibility in more depth in a later video, now that we've made room for their plausibility. If you enjoyed this commentary on the historical uh, integrity of Scripture, I urge you to like this video, and if you'd like to follow this project of mine, subscribe and hit the bell icon to be notified of future uploads. And if you have any questions, feel free to ask on my Discord or drop them in the comment section below, and I will be quick to answer them. Thank you.